Hi, I'm LadyJenevia. Today's video is another spoiler review of Dickinson Season 2. This time we are talking about Episode 7, Forever is Composed of Nows. Hopefully people are a little bit less stressed out after watching this episode compared to how people were after watching Episode 6. I know that was a really big moment. Picking up from where I left things off in my spoiler-free review, going into this episode with the way things had left off in episode 6 and the way I had interpreted the artistic ending of that episode, with having that in my mind, I thought that when we got to the beginning of episode 7 and Emily was telling Sue, I need to talk to you, I thought that she specifically wanted to talk about her own feelings towards her. Keep in mind that I've watched the season more than once in its entirety, but I have not rewatched this episode specifically since I made my review of season 2 in its entirety way back, a month ago. I know what happens in the rest of the season, but I'm a little bit fuzzy on the details. I will admit that. Most of what I remember is the big moments. I did not remember that Emily wanted to talk about being all riddled with guilt and anxiety over her falling out with Sam, because it just didn't leave as strong of an impression on me as the big reveal in episode 6 where Emily got scolded by him for writing a letter to his wife. Most of this episode is focusing on Emily, but I do want to briefly mention the Austen subplot because it would be weird and anticlimactic to try to talk about that after delving into the things that went on with Emily's story in this episode. So Austen has this meeting with Jane where she is putting her will together for her baby. I remembered that these two had some romantic tension this season, but I will admit I completely forgot that these two had kissed in this episode. I don't know if it's a spoiler for me to say that because it goes to show just how inconsequential this exchange was in the grand scheme of me watching the entire season more than once. I do have to say though, I really like how they wrote this scene. The jokes they made about being in their mid-20s and adulting being hard, they were funny. It's the 1800s. People don't live that long. And yes, adulting is hard. However, even within that humor, there is a layer of truth in regards to character insight, particularly for Austen. They say something about how things were so different last year, and this is what I have been telling all of you for this entire season airing when it comes to Austen. I know you didn't like him in season 1. I did not like him either. I've said that before. However, what the writers are doing is giving him character growth and maturation. It does not mean that he is perfect. No one on this show is without their flaws. Also, having main characters without flaws, that would make for some really boring content. Also, it's just really cute seeing him with a baby. Showing the baby what's outside the window, making horse noises. Listen, there is a real shortage in this world of quality fathers. All tea, all shade, get it together. I am not telling you, the viewer watching this review, that you have to want Austen to be with Sue. I am not asking you to ship a couple that clearly does not work together. I'm just saying that maybe he's not that bad. Now, on to the spa. Here we go. Let's talk briefly about the spa treatments. Now, I get that they're being exaggerated for comedic effect, but I would just like to remind everyone to take care of your skin. Skincare is not a joke. As a matter of fact, let me give you all a random skincare tip. When you purchase products that are in those soft containers and you start to run low on them, cut the middle and then insert one end into the other so that you can reopen it and just scoop out the product from the inside and make sure that you use all of it up so you don't waste your money. Now back to the episode. How much are we loving Emily getting to have these heart-to-hearts with her family? That conversation she had with Lavinia, that's probably my favorite part of this entire episode. Emily always has so much drama going on with Sue and Sam this season that it feels like it's been 84 years since she had any sisterly bonding time with Lavinia. I know the episodes are short, so there is not always going to be time to have everyone interact and flesh out their relationships, but I'm just saying, can we have more Emily and Lavinia scenes in season 3? Is that too much to ask? Emily is all kinds of messed up right now. Both Sam and Sue are messing with her head, pulling her in different directions, and what does Lavinia do? She scoots her little tub over to ask Emily what's wrong. And that was so cute. I love Lavinia because apparently it wasn't enough for her to just be the comedy queen of the season. She knows that Emily has got something going on, so she wants to know what it is. And what does Emily say is wrong? Nothing, other than a man ruining my life. Oh, what's that? That is the sound of a relatable protagonist. Emily's been struggling. She's all mixed up. And what does Lavinia do? Remind her exactly who she is. She reminds her that Emily is that girl. She tells Emily she has always been completely independent. She turns down marriage proposals in the 1800s. That's a brave thing to do. And when Emily says, well, maybe life would have been easier if I had accepted one of those marriage proposals and just had a more simple life, married with a baby. What does Lavinia say to her? That is the craziest shit I've ever heard you say. Period. Lavinia saying nothing but the truth. Then she says, I need you to be independent. Emily, you're my hero. Lavinia, I love her. Lavinia Dickinson deserves flowers. You better give her those flowers. I want to see more sisters having each other's back like this. This is the wholesome content I need to see after the nightmare that was 2020. I was amazed to see Emily also having a heart-to-heart with her mother, where her mother was not being an adversarial figure. If we look back on the show thus far, not just this season, but the show in general, Emily's parents usually represent this traditional, old-fashioned view of the world and life. They don't usually approve of her wanting to forge her own eccentric path. The entirety of season 1 was her fighting with her father, who is still trash to me, by the way. You don't get to hit your daughter and have me be cool with you ever again after that. Sorry, not sorry. I don't like you. Emily's mother is usually the judgmental figure. Even in this episode, she's clearly bothered when Emily wanted to drag Sue off to a different treatment instead of following the schedule that Emily's mother had created. But then, plot twist, Emily's mother actually has great advice to offer, which is that the person who you love should not be making you feel sick. Now, that is not just good advice by the standards of the 1800s. Everyone should be remembering that advice today in 2021. We of course need to talk about Sue, but before we get to that, I do want to mention Henry and how frustrated I am by how little screen time this civil rights storyline is getting. Though, to be honest, if they actually gave this storyline the screen time it deserves, there would be no reason to focus on any of these other lead characters. Who cares about the fickle problems of rich people? Henry's out here getting death threats every day, trying to get equal rights for his people. Now that is a story that is upsettingly relevant today. Has anything changed since the 1800s after the year we just had? Clearly not enough. Now on to the last topic of discussion, Emily and Sue. Like I said before, I did not remember that she wanted to get into the drama from the opera of what happened with Sam. I really don't know how much I can express my opinions on this conversation that they have because I have a lot more information in my mind. I was getting some comments from viewers about some of my other reviews this season, and some of them have been talking about being frustrated with Sue, and these commenters are also saying that they're suspicious of Sue's motivations. Emily is expressing frustration over giving Sam a poem and him making it seem like he wanted to publish her, but then he still hasn't published the poem and it's been several weeks now. The show keeps us in the dark about Sam the same way they keep Emily in the dark about Sam. We are mostly following her perspective and am looking at this world through her lens, which is why you get these flashes of words on the screen when she's writing poems, these surreal dream sequences, all of that is coming from Emily. Since she doesn't know if Sam is good or bad or where he falls on that spectrum, we are just as confused as she is. And it's a valid question she's asking. Why hasn't he published her poem yet? And Sue is not doing anything meaningful to reassure her. I'm really sorry to say this. I know she's your girl, but she's giving these empty platitudes. Your anxiety is natural. You're just seeing things wrong. Relax. You just need to breathe. Blah, 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 blah. Excuse me. Sue, you brought this man into her life, and Emily was absolutely right to clock you for that. Emily has been all turned around ever since he showed up. Listen to what she said in this episode. She said, "But I don't believe in myself anymore. I used to have this confidence, this power, but not anymore. Not since I met him. Sue, I hate to say this, but it's your fault. You pressured me into this. You introduced me to him. You started filling my head with all these ideas about fame. And as soon as I gave him my poem, I lost everything. The flow I used to have, it got cut off. I used to be inspired by everything. And then suddenly the only thing that mattered to me was him, what he thought, how he felt. It's like he invaded me. He's all I can think about. I used to have a drive that came from somewhere else, and now it all comes from him." And all Sue could say in response to that was to breathe and relax. You know Sam well enough to introduce these two to each other, but you can't be bothered to pay him a visit and ask him what the hell is taking so long, but in probably more polite 1800s vernacular than that. Surely you could have come up with something better than breathe and relax. Now, I don't want to get into all of that right now. We'll talk more about this later, but I do hope that the stans are at least happy with the interactions of these two and the aesthetics of the outfits and Sue's exposed clavicle. Yes, I know about the clavicle because I go look at your Twitter profiles to get a sense of what the chatter is. How am I supposed to commentate on a show for a few months without doing my due diligence and knowing some of what the audience is talking about? Like when they released that promotional image of Emily with Sam before episode 5 aired, I immediately went to the quote tweets and I just started scrolling and laughing. The no TP commentary was hilarious, and then they didn't even end up actually hooking up. It was all in her mind. The Dickinson marketing. They really pulled a fast one. Anyway, the last point to mention before we close off this review is Sam coming to Emily's house. Now, I know that the majority of you do not like him, but I have to say that the line he had about, "This is print journalism, there's no way it can fail," that was funny. Listen, a funny line is a funny line no matter who says it. A broken clock is still correct twice a day. It's a good meta joke because print journalism is dying, an agonizing death right now. It's not particularly relevant to the story of Dickinson since none of these characters are going to live to see the development of iPhones and Mark Zuckerberg being a plague on our world. But this joke is a nice nod to us, the audience, who do exist in a world where everything is about clickbait. That's why I don't put my face in my video thumbnails. For one, I hate posing with a cringy facial expression, so I don't do that anymore. But also, no one cares about my face, so I just put Hailee Steinfeld in the thumbnail. That's what the people are interested in. So it took Sam forever, but he's finally going to publish Emily's poem. It's going to be right there on the front page, and this is very exciting. And then Emily goes up into her room and grabs her poems and she says, "I want to give you all of my poems, all of them. Every one I ever wrote. Take them. They're yours." Yeah, okay. When I watched this for the first time, I feel like I could tell that this felt ominous and foreboding, but part of that comes from the fact that they just don't give us the full picture of what is going on with Sam. First, they dropped that big revelation at the party about how he has this reputation of sleeping with all the women poets that he publishes. But then in episode 6, he is very adamant that Emily overstepped a boundary and made his wife uncomfortable by writing that letter, and that's not okay. So then we're all sitting here questioning even more, what is his deal? We still never got an answer of why it took so long to publish her poem, or why he was so weird when she first gave him the poem. He was trying so hard to get her to agree to be published, and then when she finally did agree, he was just not enthusiastic the way we as an audience wanted him to be. This is why I'm saying at this point in the first time viewing of this material that we are all turned around just as much as Emily is. Obviously, if I removed all the filters I have about this episode, I would be saying a hell of a lot more, and with a lot more emotion, mind you, but we're just not there yet. I will say, though, that these last 3 episodes, they're going to bang. So much is coming. If you are not ready, you better get ready. If you're watching this video right when it's gone up, stay tuned because I will be posting my spoiler-free review of episode 8 in about an hour, I want to say, give or take. Don't forget to like and comment since that really helps out my channel a lot. Also consider subscribing. It would be really cool if I could hit 10K this year. I know that that's a big goal, but there it is. You can also follow my social media accounts. Everything is in the description box, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.